What happens when a single, violent impulse costs you everything? In the pressurized cabin of a flight from Chicago to Los Angeles, one flight attendant, secure in her seniority, makes a fatal mistake. She isn't just rude to a passenger. She doesn't just discriminate. She raises her hand. What she doesn't know is that the quiet, professional black woman in seat 4B isn't just another traveler. She's Serena Washington, the founder and CEO of the entire airline. This isn't a story about bad service. It's a story about a 5-second decision that triggers a total, devastating, and public unraveling. Get ready, because the karma in this story is as turbulent as the flight. The air in Chicago O'Hare's Terminal 3 was a familiar cocktail of stale coffee, Cinnabon-induced regret, and the faint, kerosene-scented promise of departure. It was a symphony Serena Washington knew well, though she usually experienced it from the hushed sanctuary of the Summit 1 Global Lounge. Today, however, she was at Gate K-12, submerged in the democratic chaos of a delayed boarding for Summit Air Flight 771 to LAX. Her anonymity was a costume she wore several times a quarter. A simple charcoal grey pantsuit by theory, a pair of discreet diamond studs, and a well-worn leather satchel replaced her usual bespoke wardrobe and liveried car service. To the weary travelers around her, she was just another face in the crowd, a professional-looking black woman typing quietly on a high-end laptop. To her company, she was a ghost, an unannounced passenger using a ticket booked under her maiden name. These undercover boss trips, as her executive assistant Liam called them, were her most valuable source of data. She believed you couldn't understand a multi-billion-dollar airline from a spreadsheet. You had to smell the cabin air, taste the reheated food, and most importantly, feel the service. Flight 771 was already testing her patience. A late-arriving aircraft had pushed their departure back by 90 minutes. The passengers were restless, a sea of grumbling, phone-checking, and fitfully sleeping bodies. The gate agent, a young man named David Chen, was visibly stressed, but maintained a veneer of programmed politeness. "We do apologize for the delay, folks. We will begin boarding shortly." Then the flight crew arrived, rolling their standard-issue luggage behind them. Serena watched them. This was the first test. Did they look proud, engaged, or were they just punching the clock? The lead flight attendant, a woman in her late 40s with blonde hair pulled into a severe bun, strode to the front. Her name tag, Serena noted, read Tanya Peterson. Tanya didn't smile at the waiting passengers. She began an animated, clearly annoyed conversation with David, gesturing angrily at her own watch and then at the plane on the tarmac. She seemed personally offended by the delay, as if it were an inconvenience staged purely for her. Serena felt a familiar tightening in her stomach. She had spent a decade building Summit Air from a bankrupt regional carrier into a premier airline, and she had done it on one principle: service. She poached executives from luxury hotel chains, not other airlines. She invested millions in de-escalation training. She wanted her crew to be ambassadors, not just cabin staff. Tanya Peterson, with her thunderous expression and dismissive posture, was the antithesis of that investment. Boarding finally began. We are now pleased to invite our first-class passengers, as well as our Summit Gold members, to begin boarding. Serena, holding a business-class ticket, filed in with the second group. As she approached the podium, Tanya was scanning boarding passes, her movements jerky and impatient. "Have a great flight," David Chen offered Serena with a tired but genuine smile. "Thanks, David." "Hang in there," Serena replied quietly, making a mental note to send a commendation. She stepped into the jet bridge and then onto the aircraft, where Tanya was standing at the doorway, her arms crossed. "Welcome aboard," Tanya muttered, her voice flat, her eyes scanning somewhere over Serena's shoulder. "Good afternoon," Serena said warmly, deliberately making eye contact. Tanya's eyes flicked to hers, held for a fraction of a second, and dismissed her. There was no "welcome," no "may I help you with your bag?" Just a cold, silent appraisal that made Serena feel like an intrusion. Serena found her seat, 4B, an aisle seat in the business class cabin. As she settled in, she watched Tanya interact with the other boarding passengers, with a handsome white businessman in a crisp suit for seat 3A. Tanya was all teeth. "Oh, let me get that roller bag for you, sir. We'll have you relaxing with a drink in just a moment. Can I get you a pre-departure champagne?" For an elderly Indian couple who paused in the aisle, confused about their seat numbers, Tanya was a different person. "Sir, ma'am, you're blocking the aisle. We have to keep moving. What are your seats? 22A and B. You're in economy. Keep going, all the way back." Her voice was a whip. Serena logged the interaction on her laptop in a password-protected file. "FAT Peterson. Inconsistent service. Clear preference shown for white male passengers. Abrasive toward elderly ESL passengers." A man sat down in 4C, next to the window. He looked to be in his 30s with a laptop bag that had The Winged Traveler logo on it. A blogger, Serena guessed. Great. A critic was on board. The man, Mark Langley, immediately pulled out his phone and started typing, clearly annoyed by the delay. Serena was about to put her laptop away when she realized she'd left her noise-cancelling headphones in her satchel's side pocket, which was already in the overhead bin. She stood up briefly, just as Tanya was walking past. "Excuse me," Serena said politely, reaching for the latch. Tanya stopped, sighed dramatically, and planted her hands on her hips. "Ma'am, we are trying to board a plane. Passengers need to be seated so others can get past." "I understand," Serena said, her voice still even. "I just need one moment to retrieve my headphones." "You should have done that before you sat down," Tanya snapped. "Now you're holding up the entire plane. Sit down. I'll get it for you later if I have time." The sheer, unadulterated rudeness was breathtaking. It was a direct order, given with the dismissive arrogance of a drill sergeant to a clumsy recruit. The man in 3A, Mr. Champagne, looked on with mild amusement. Mark Langley in 4C looked up from his phone, his eyebrows raised. Serena, not wanting to cause a scene that would delay the flight further, gave Tanya a long, cold look. "Fine," she said. She sat down. The message was clear. This was Tanya's tin pot kingdom, and she was its unpleasant queen. Serena added to her notes. Confrontational and unprofessional, openly hostile. The flight, she thought, was going to be very, very long. The Airbus A321 finally pushed back from the gate, nearly 2 hours behind schedule. The ascent from O'Hare was grey and bumpy, cutting through a thick layer of Midwestern clouds before breaking into the sharp, brilliant sunshine of the upper atmosphere. Serena tried to work, opening the quarterly service reports. The irony was bitter. She was reading metric after metric about improved customer satisfaction scores and net promoter scores, all while the living, breathing embodiment of a brand killer was patrolling the aisle just feet away. Tanya Peterson did not improve with altitude. The business class service began, and it was a masterclass in passive aggression. When she served Serena her pre-ordered meal, a grilled salmon salad, she didn't place it on the tray table. She dropped it. The plastic lid clattered loudly, and a few drops of vinaigrette spattered onto Serena's sleeve. "Oh, careful," Serena said, grabbing a napkin. Tanya just stared at her. "It's a salad, Mom." There was no apology, no, "let me get you a cloth." She simply turned and moved to the next passenger, asking Mr. 3A if his champagne needed a little top-up. Serena meticulously cleaned her sleeve, her jaw tight. She was no longer just an analyst. She was a victim of the very behavior she'd sworn to eradicate from her company. She ate the salad, which was actually quite good, a recipe her executive culinary team had spent 6 months perfecting. The product was fine. The human delivery system was broken. About an hour later, the problem began. Serena had been drinking water steadily, trying to combat the dehydrating cabin air. Now, she needed to use the restroom, urgently. She looked up. The fasten seatbelt sign was on. The captain had just announced they were passing over the Rockies and to expect some light, intermittent chop. It wasn't severe turbulence, just the gentle, annoying bumps that force the sign to be illuminated for insurance purposes. Tanya and the other, younger flight attendant, a girl named Chloe who seemed perfectly pleasant but terrified of Tanya, were in the front galley. Tanya was leaning against the bulkhead, arms crossed, deep in a non-work-related conversation with Mr. 3A, who had unbuckled and walked up to stretch his legs. They were laughing about layover spots in Hawaii. Serena pressed her call button. She waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes. The blue light above her seat was illuminated, but Tanya didn't even glance back. She was too engrossed in her conversation. Serena could feel the pressure in her bladder mounting from uncomfortable to painful. She pressed the call button again. This time, Tanya did look. She saw the light, made eye contact with Serena, and then, in a gesture of pure, calculated contempt, she turned back to her conversation. She had dismissed the call button. Serena was appalled. This was not just bad service. It was a denial of a basic human need. She couldn't wait any longer. The chop was mild, just a light tremble. She decided to risk it. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up, intending to walk the 5 steps to the forward lavatory. The timing was a catastrophe. Just as her feet touched the aisle carpet, the A321 hit a sudden, unexpected air pocket. It wasn't a dive, but a sharp, lateral jolt that sent the aircraft shuddering. Serena, caught off balance, stumbled. She reached out a hand to steady herself, grasping the first thing she could find, which happened to be the shoulder of Tanya Peterson, who was still standing in the aisle. Serena's grip was automatic, a reflex to stop her fall. "Oh, sorry," she gasped, regaining her balance. Tanya Peterson, however, reacted as if she'd been electrocuted. The casual, flirty expression she'd been wearing for Mr. 3A vanished, replaced by a mask of pure, incandescent rage. She whirled around, her face inches from Serena's. "What in the hell do you think you're doing?" she shrieked. The entire cabin, which had been lulled by the engine's drone, snapped to attention. "I'm sorry," Serena said, stunned by the venom. "The plane jolted. I was just trying to get to the seatbelt sign is on," Tanya bellowed, her voice cracking with fury. "It is on for a reason. Are you stupid or just entitled? Sit down!" The cabin was dead silent. Even Mr. 3A had backed away, his top-up forgotten. Mark Langley, the blogger in 4C, slowly lifted his smartphone, held it at his lap, and pressed record. Serena Washington was not a woman who was easily intimidated. She had faced down hostile creditors, skeptical boards, and cutthroat competitors. She would not be screamed at by her own employee. She kept her voice low, but it cut through the air like a razor. "First of all, you will not speak to me in that tone. Second, I pressed my call button twice because I urgently need the lavatory, and you deliberately ignored me." Tanya's face, already red, deepened to a dark, mottled crimson. The challenge to her authority in front of the entire cabin sent her over the edge. "I ignored you? You think you're special. You think the rules don't apply to you. I've had it with people like you." The people like you hung in the air, thick and poisoned. Serena knew exactly what it meant. Tanya, lost in her own racist, resentful narrative, saw a black woman in business class and assumed she was a diversity hire, a new money loudmouth, or someone who'd gamed the system for an upgrade. She couldn't conceive that this woman might belong there. "People like me," Serena repeated, her voice dropping to a dangerous calm. "And what people would that be, Tanya?" "You heard me," Tanya screeched, jabbing a finger in Serena's face. "You're arrogant. You're a danger to this flight, and you are going to sit down now. I am a passenger on this airline, and I will be reporting you for—" Serena never finished the sentence. Fueled by a career's worth of resentment, a lifetime of prejudice, and the adrenaline of the confrontation, Tanya Peterson snapped. She drew back her right hand, and she slapped Serena Washington hard across the face. The sound was not a theatrical smack. It was a sharp, ugly crack of flesh on flesh, a visceral sound that seemed to suck all the air out of the cabin. It was followed by a collective, horrified gasp from the 20 passengers in the business-class cabin. Serena's head snapped to the side. Her cheek exploded in a constellation of stinging, fiery pain. For a frozen second, there was no thought. There was only the ringing in her left ear, the hot print of Tanya's hand on her skin, and a profound, bottomless silence. Time seemed to slow down. She could see Mr. 3A's mouth hanging open, his champagne glass frozen halfway to his lips. She could see the young flight attendant, Chloe, in the galley, her hands flying to her mouth, her eyes wide with terror. And she could see Mark Langley in 4C, his face a mask of disbelief, his iPhone 16 Pro held rock steady, the small red recording icon glowing like a judgmental eye. Tanya Peterson stood panting, her chest heaving. Her hand was still half raised. The shock of her own action was just beginning to register on her face, but it was quickly being replaced by a defensive, panicked fury. She had crossed a line from which there was no return, and she knew it. Her only option was to double down, to paint herself as the victim. You assaulted me!" Tanya shrieked, finding her voice. It was a desperate, nonsensical accusation. "You pushed me. You're unruly. You're a threat." Serena slowly turned her head, back to face her attacker. She did not cry. She did not scream. Her expression was terrifyingly calm, but her eyes, dark and focused, held a cold fire that made Tanya instinctively take a step back. Serena raised one hand, not to strike, but to gently touch the tips of her fingers to her smarting cheek. "You," Serena said, her voice barely a whisper, yet it carried to every corner of the silent cabin, "have just made the single biggest mistake of your entire life." "I'm calling the captain!" Tanya scrambled, her voice high and panicked. "We're diverting! You're being arrested! You assaulted a flight crew member!" She fumbled for the interphone, her hands shaking so badly she could barely press the buttons. Captain Reynolds, come to the cabin immediately. I've been assaulted by a passenger in 4B. She's unruly. We need to divert." The cabin door buzzed, and Captain Reynolds, a silver-haired man with a stern, by-the-book demeanor, emerged. He took in the scene, a silent cabin, a flight attendant who looked hysterical, and a passenger with a bright red handprint blooming on her face. "What is going on here?" the captain demanded, his voice a low growl of command. "Captain!" Tanya cried, pointing a trembling finger at Serena. "This passenger, she got up during turbulence. She pushed me. She became aggressive. I had to defend myself. She's out of control." The lie was so bald-faced, so grotesque, that Serena almost laughed. She just shook her head, still cradling her cheek. Captain Reynolds looked at Serena. "Ma'am, is this true? Did you assault my flight attendant?" Before Serena could speak, a new voice cut in. "That's a lie." All heads turned to 4C. Mark Langley was standing up, his phone held up like a shield. "My name is Mark Langley," he said, his voice clear and precise. "I'm a journalist. I have been recording this entire interaction for the last 3 minutes. This passenger," he motioned to Serena, "did nothing. She was trying to go to the bathroom. Your flight attendant, Ms. Peterson, verbally abused her, used discriminatory language, and then, when the passenger calmly stood her ground, Ms. Peterson slapped her in the face. Unprovoked." Tanya's blood ran cold. "A video. A journalist. You can't film me," Tanya shrieked, lunging for Mark's phone. "That's illegal. Give me that phone." "Get back," Captain Reynolds bellowed, grabbing Tanya's arm. The last thing he needed was an assault on a second passenger. He shoved her, hard, toward the galley. "Miss Peterson, you will go to the rear galley. You will stay there. You will not speak to anyone. Is that clear?" Tanya, trapped and exposed, burst into hysterical, sobbing tears. She... You don't understand. Go! Now!" Defeated, Tanya stumbled past him and disappeared behind the curtain into the economy cabin, her sobs echoing back. Captain Reynolds turned back to the cabin, his face grim. He looked at Mark. "Sir, you have that on video?" "Yes, Captain," Mark said. "Clear as day. Audio and video." The captain nodded, his jaw set. He looked at Serena, his eyes softening with professional concern. "Ma'am, are you all right? Can we get you some ice for that?" "Yes, thank you. I'd like some ice," Serena said, her voice shaking slightly now as the adrenaline began to recede. "And Captain, you will not be diverting this flight. We will continue to Los Angeles." "Ma'am, under the circumstances." "We will continue to Los Angeles," Serena repeated, her voice regaining its steel. "I do not want to inconvenience the other 180 passengers on this plane because of your employees' criminal behavior. But I want, and I expect, to have law enforcement meet this aircraft at the gate. I will be pressing full charges for assault." Captain Reynolds looked at this woman. She was poised, articulate, and clearly in charge, despite the red welt on her face. She was not the unruly passenger his FA had described. She was the victim. "Understood, ma'am," he said, his respect for her obvious. "I will make the call. We'll be on the ground in approximately 2 hours. Chloe," he called to the other FA, who was still frozen in the galley, "get this passenger some ice, a bottle of water, and anything else she needs, and relocate her to seat 1A immediately." "Yes, Captain," Chloe whispered, scurrying to the ice bucket. Serena nodded, a silent thank you to the captain. She gathered her things and moved to the front row seat, as far from her previous spot as possible. As she passed Mark Langley, she paused. "Thank you, Mr. Langley," she said quietly. "Don't thank me," Mark said, his eyes hard. "I'm just appalled. I fly 200,000 miles a year. That was the most unprofessional thing I have ever witnessed. I'll be posting this, you know, as soon as we have Wi-Fi." "I would expect you to," Serena said. "But please do me a favor. Wait until after the police have seen it. You can email me a copy. I'll give you my card." She sat down in one eye, pressed the ice-filled napkin to her cheek, and closed her eyes. The physical pain was already fading, replaced by a cold, methodical rage. Tanya Peterson hadn't just slapped a passenger. She had slapped the CEO. She hadn't just violated company policy. She had assaulted the woman who wrote company policy. And she had done it all, blissfully, stupidly unaware. For the next 2 hours, the cabin was as quiet as a tomb. The landing at LAX could not come soon enough. The descent into Los Angeles was smooth, a stark contrast to the human turbulence that had defined the flight. The sprawling grid of city lights, normally a comforting sight to Serena, looked like a circuit board waiting to be activated. Her mind was already racing, planning the next 3, 4, 5 steps. This was no longer just a personnel issue. It was a crisis. As the plane taxied toward the terminal, Captain Reynolds's voice came over the PA. His tone was devoid of its usual cheerful, "Thanks for flying with us" cadence. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are arriving at Gate 73B. Due to a security matter on board, we ask that all passengers remain in their seats until authorities have boarded the aircraft. I repeat, all passengers are to remain seated. We apologize for this further delay and appreciate your cooperation." A murmur of anxiety went through the cabin. Passengers in economy, who had only heard rumors of the fight in business class, craned their necks. The jet bridge docked with a solid, final thump. The fasten seatbelt sign pinged off, but no one moved. Serena watched the cabin door. She had her leather satchel at her feet. Her face was stiff, the ice having numbed the sting, but she knew a bruise was already forming, a purple and blue badge of her employee's failure. The door was opened, not by a gate agent, but by 2 officers from the Los Angeles Airport Police, followed by a tense-looking Summit Air Station manager, Robert Paulson, his suit jacket flapping as he hurried. "Captain Reynolds?" the first officer, a tall man whose badge read Diaz, asked. "In here, officers," the captain said, emerging from the cockpit. "The passenger who was assaulted is in seat 1A. The subject is in the rear galley, detained by my other flight attendant." Officer Diaz nodded and approached Serena. "Ma'am, I'm Officer Diaz. We've been advised you were the victim of an assault." "That is correct, officer," Serena said, standing up. "I was struck in the face by the lead flight attendant, Tanya Peterson." The officer's partner, Officer Miller, shined her flashlight briefly on Serena's cheek. "I can see the contusion. Ma'am, are you injured? Do you require medical attention?" "I'll be fine," Serena said. "I just want to file a report and press charges." "Understood," Officer Diaz said. He turned to Mark Langley in 4C. "And you, sir, are the witness with the video?" "That's me," Mark said, holding up his phone. "I have it right here. Emailed a copy to myself and the cloud already, just in case." "Smart," Officer Miller noted. "We'll need a copy of that." "Captain," Diaz ordered, "have your other FA bring Ms. Peterson up here, please." A moment later, Tanya Peterson was escorted up the aisle. Her face was a wreck. Her makeup was smeared in black rivers down her swollen red cheeks. She was no longer the arrogant queen of the cabin. She was a terrified, sniffling mess. "That's her," Serena said simply, her voice void of all emotion. "Ma'am, step onto the jet bridge," Officer Diaz ordered Tanya. "It was a misunderstanding," Tanya wailed as they guided her off the plane. "She pushed me. I was scared. I've been with Summit Air for 22 years. I have a perfect record. You can't do this." "You can give your statement to Officer Miller," Diaz said, his voice bored. He had heard it all before. He turned back to Serena, Mark, and Captain Reynolds. "Okay, let's get your statements. Mr. Paulson," he said to the station manager, "we'll need a private room, and we'll need to see that video." "Of course, officer. Right this way. Ms." He paused, looking at Serena's ticket, which was under her maiden name. "Miss Johnson, Mr. Langley, if you'll follow me." They walked off the jet bridge into the bustling terminal, a small, grim procession. Passengers from the flight were now deplaning, staring openly at the scene. Serena kept her head high, ignoring the whispers. They were led to a small, windowless Summit Air Gold service office behind the main desk. Officer Miller was already there, with Tanya sobbing in a corner. Officer Diaz set up a laptop. "Mr. Langley, can you airdrop or email that file to me?" "Sending it now," Mark said. A moment later, The video file popped up on the officer's screen. "Okay, let's see what we've got." He pressed play. The office was filled with the sound of Tanya's own voice, sharp and abusive. "The seatbelt sign is on. Are you stupid or just entitled? Sit down. I've had it with people like you. People like me. And what people would that be, Tanya? You heard me. You're arrogant." And then, the crack. The video showed it all, clear as day. Serena standing calmly, Tanya raging, and the slap, undeniable and vicious. Tanya's sobs hitched and stopped. There was no denying the digital proof. The room was silent. Officer Diaz closed the laptop. He looked at Officer Miller. She nodded. "Tanya Peterson," Officer Diaz said, his voice official and final. "Stand up. You are under arrest for assault and battery." "No!" Tanya screamed, shrinking back. "No, please. It was a mistake. I'm not. Please." Officer Miller was already pulling out the handcuffs. "Ma'am, put your hands behind your back." As the metal cuffs clicked shut, Tanya's terror morphed back into that familiar, bitter rage. She rounded on Serena, her eyes blazing. You did this! You planned this! You'll be hearing from my union! They will destroy you! You'll be banned from Summit Air and every other airline for life! You have no idea who you're messing with!" Her screams echoed in the small office. The station manager, Robert Paulson, who had been wringing his hands, finally stepped forward. "Miss Peterson, that is enough," he said, his voice trembling. "You have assaulted a passenger. You are a disgrace to this uniform." "You shut up, Robert," Tanya spat. "You're just a glorified desk jockey. I have seniority. You can't touch me. Who do you think she even is? Just some nobody who got a free upgrade." Robert Paulson had been staring at Serena for the past minute. He'd been looking past the bruise, at the familiar, aristocratic set of her jaw, the piercing intelligence in her eyes. He'd seen that face before. Not in person, but in the company-wide emails. On the cover of the in-flight magazine, in the Forbes profile. His blood didn't just run cold, it froze solid. His stomach dropped into his shoes. "Oh my God," he whispered, his face going pale as ash. "Oh, my God." Tanya paused, her insults dying on her lips. She saw the look on Robert's face. What's wrong with you?" Robert ignored her. He took a hesitant step towards Serena, his body language transforming from managerial to groveling. Miss Washington," he stammered, his voice cracking. Is that you? Ms. Serena Washington." The name, when it was spoken, landed in the small, windowless office with the force of a sonic boom. Officer Diaz and Officer Miller paused, their hands on the now silent Tanya. Mark Langley, the blogger, who had been dutifully taking notes, froze, his pen hovering over his pad. Tanya Peterson's world tilted on its axis. The air left her lungs. Her brain, which had been firing off scenarios of union grievances and lawsuits, simply stopped. "Washington?" she whispered, her eyes darting between the terrified station manager and the calm, bruised woman in the charcoal grey suit. "What? What did you say?" "Washington? As in the building." She meant the Summit Air corporate headquarters, the Washington Tower in Dallas. Robert Paulson was visibly shaking, sweat beading on his forehead. As in the owner, Tanya. As in the founder and chief executive officer of Summit Air. Serena Washington let the silence stretch. She watched the cascading series of emotions play across Tanya's face. Confusion, denial, a flicker of horrified understanding, and finally, a deep, abysmal, soul-crushing terror. It was the look of a person watching their own life fall off a cliff in slow motion. Tanya's knees literally buckled. Officer Miller, mistaking the movement for resistance, yanked her up by the arm. No. No, Tanya mumbled, shaking her head. That's not. She can't be. She's in 4B. She's... Serena finally spoke. Her voice was no longer that of a passenger. It was the voice of a CEO, a voice that commanded boardrooms and silenced arguments, a voice that held the weight of 20,000 employees. She is, Serena confirmed, her voice like Arctic ice. She met Tanya's gaze, and Tanya crumpled. Mr. Paulson, Serena continued, turning her attention to the quaking station manager. Please get my assistant, Liam Forrester, on the phone. You have his number. Tell him I've landed at LAX and I've been involved in a Code 3 incident. A Code 3 was Summit's internal jargon for an event involving law enforcement and severe brand risk. Yes, Ms. Washington. Right away, Ms. Washington. Robert fumbled for his phone, his fingers seeming to have extra useless thumbs. Officers, Serena said, turning to Diaz and Miller. I want to be clear. I am pressing charges to the fullest extent of the law. This was not a customer service dispute. This was a criminal assault. My corporation's legal team will be in contact with your department to provide any further support you need. Understood, Ms. Washington, Officer Diaz said. The mom was gone, replaced by a new, deferential respect. They weren't just dealing with a passenger. They were dealing with a high-net-worth individual, a public figure. The paperwork was going to be immaculate. Let's get her out of here. No! Tanya shrieked, a final desperate plea as the officers began to lead her out. Miss Washington, please! I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I didn't know it was you. It was the worst possible thing she could have said. Serena took a step closer, her eyes narrowing. You didn't know? She repeated. That's your defense? That you would have treated me with basic human dignity if you knew I was your boss? That it's acceptable to abuse and assault a passenger as long as you think they're a nobody? Serena gestured to her own face. You didn't slap a CEO, Ms. Peterson. You slapped a passenger. You slapped a black woman who you decided, based on nothing, was beneath you. The fact that I am the CEO is just the consequence. It's the reason you will be held accountable in a way you could never have imagined. Please, Tanya sobbed, all pretense gone, just raw, pathetic begging. My kids, my mortgage. I'm getting divorced. I'm having a bad day, a bad year. Please don't do this. 22 years. Don't take my life away. You should have thought of your mortgage before you raised your hand, Serena said, her voice final. You should have thought of your 22 years of service before you decided to ignore my call button. You are a liability, Ms. Peterson. You are a cancer in the company I built, and you are being cut out. She turned to Robert Paulson, who was holding a phone out, his hand shaking. Mr. Paulson. Yes. Ms. Washington? Get Ann Kimbrough, our head of HR, and Frank Thiel, our general counsel, on a conference call with me and Liam. Now, tell them I am invoking the zero-tolerance morality clause. I want Tanya Peterson's employment with Summit Air terminated, for cause, effective immediately. I want her flight benefits revoked. I want her access to company property cut off before she's even booked. And I want her security credentials flagged across all our partner airlines in the Star Alliance. I will not have her serving coffee on one of our codeshare flights to Lufthansa. She will never work in this industry again. Each word was a hammer blow. Tanya Peterson went limp, a dead weight between the two officers, her sobs turning into a low, hopeless moan. And Robert, Serena added, send a car. I'm not going to my hotel. I'm going to the nearest 24-hour clinic to have this bruise documented for the police report. Then I'm going to the office. Yes, Ms. Washington. As the officers dragged the sobbing, broken flight attendant out of the office, Serena was left with Robert and a wide-eyed Mark Langley, who was typing on his phone so fast his thumbs were a blur. "Mr. Langley," Serena said, turning to him. "Ms. Washington," Mark said, his voice full of awe. This is the craziest story I've ever covered, and I once got stuck on a tarmac in Minsk for 36 hours. "I'm sure it is," Serena said, a faint, tired smile touching her lips. "I have a request. You have the video. It is your right as a journalist to post it. But my company is about to go into crisis mode. The stock will take a hit in pre-market trading tomorrow if this gets out tonight in the wrong way." "What are you asking?" Mark asked, his journalistic instincts wary. "Don't post it. Yet," Serena said. "Give me 12 hours. My communications team is going to be releasing an official statement. We are not going to hide this. We are not going to no-comment it. We are going to own it. I want you to have the exclusive. You can post your video, your entire story, but post it with our official statement. It will give you context, show that we took immediate action, and it will give your story infinitely more weight. You'll have the full picture, the assault, the arrest, the firing, and the CAO's response, all in one package." Mark stared at her. She was offering him a scoop, not just a viral video, but the entire, curated, explosive story. It was a brilliant PR move. She was controlling the narrative by partnering with the media, not fighting it. 12 hours, Mark agreed, nodding. "You have my word. And Ms. Washington, I'm sorry that happened to you. But damn, am I impressed." "Don't be impressed, Mr. Langley," Serena said, picking up her satchel and dabbing her cheek. "Just be accurate." She walked out of the office, leaving Robert Paulson to scramble after her, already dialing the general counsel. The cleanup had begun. The next 12 hours were a blur of calculated, devastating efficiency. Serena Washington did not operate from a place of emotional chaos. She operated from a place of strategic warfare. The assault on her was an assault on her brand, and she would defend her brand with the full, crushing weight of her corporate empire. While still in the back of the Lincoln Town car, speeding away from LAX to an urgent care clinic, she was on a 4-way call with her executive team. "Frank," she said to her general counsel, "I want the criminal case pursued with vigor. Offer the LA District Attorney's Office our full cooperation. I also want a civil suit filed against Tanya Peterson personally. I don't care about the money. I want to garnish her wages for the rest of her life. I want a restraining order preventing her from coming within 500 feet of me, my home, or any Summit Air property. I want her to understand that the system she relied on, her union, her seniority, is utterly powerless against the rule of law. Understood, Serena. I'll have the team filing by morning." "Anne," she said to her head of HR, "the termination is done. But I want a deep dive audit of the Chicago-based crew. I want to see every complaint ever filed against Ms. Peterson. I want to know who her supervisors were and why her behavior, which I personally witnessed was toxic long before the slap, was never corrected. This isn't one bad apple. This is a rotten branch. I want it pruned by week's end." "Already on it, Serena," Anne replied, her voice grim. "We've already found 3 prior passenger-facing complaints against her in the last 2 years, all closed with a verbal warning. Her direct supervisor is being grounded." "Good. Liam," she said to her assistant, "clear my schedule for the next 48 hours. Get me a flight back to Dallas on our jet by 6 a.m. and draft a company-wide memo. Subject line, accountability. I want every employee to know, by the time they clock in tomorrow, that an assault on a passenger occurred, that the employee was arrested and that their employment is over. We will not tolerate this. Not ever. From anyone. Done, Liam said. Finally, she directed her orders to her head of communications. Maria, we have a blogger, Mark Langley. He has the video. He has agreed to hold for 12 hours. At 5 a.m. Pacific, we go live. We will release my official statement, the news of the arrest and termination, and Mr. Langley will post his video and story simultaneously. We are not spinning this. We are leading it. The headline is not Airline CEO Assaulted. The headline is Summit Air Takes Decisive Action After Appalling Passenger Assault. We are the ones who fixed this. We are the heroes of the story, not the villains. By the time Serena had her bruise photographed by a doctor, a significant contusion consistent with blunt force trauma, the report read, the wheels of her revenge and her company's survival were already in motion. At 5:01 a.m. PST, the bomb dropped. Mark Langley's blog, The Winged Traveler, posted the story. Exclusive. People like you. Summit Air slaps passenger in shocking video. The twist? The passenger was the CEO. The post was a nuclear explosion on the internet. It had everything. The high-definition video of the slap, the audio of the racist "people like you" comment, the first-hand account from Mark, and the stunning reveal of Serena's identity. Within the post was the official statement from Summit Air, which was released concurrently to the Associated Press. This morning, a Summit Air employee, Tanya Peterson, was arrested for the assault of a passenger. The behavior in this video is appalling and is the antithesis of the values of service and respect we work to build at our airline every day. That passenger was our founder and CEO, Serena Washington, who was traveling in a private capacity to audit the customer experience. Ms. Peterson's employment has been terminated. We are cooperating fully with law enforcement and have offered our unreserved apologies to Ms. Washington, who, like any passenger, deserved to be treated with dignity. Summit Air has a zero-tolerance policy for violence or discrimination of any kind. To ensure this is an isolated incident, we are mandating a company-wide service and respect retraining for all 15,000 of our customer-facing employees, effective immediately. The story was picked up by CNN, Fox News, The New York Times, and the Daily Mail within an hour. It was the #1 trending topic on Twitter worldwide by 8 a.m. The reaction was swift and brutal. The corporate karma, Summit Air's stock, ticker SUMT, dipped 9% in pre-market trading. But as the narrative Serena had crafted took hold, that this was an act of decisive leadership, not corporate failure, it stabilized. Pundits on CNBC praised Serena's steel-spine handling of the crisis. By the end of the day, the stock had recovered half its losses. Serena, by being the victim, had reinforced her own brand. She was tough, she was fair, and she was in the trenches. The public karma, Tanya Peterson's life was vaporized. Her name and face were everywhere. She was instantly doxxed. She was the plane slapper, Summit slapper, or most virally, Tanya the Terrible. Her social media accounts were flooded with tens of thousands of messages of pure vitriol. She was evicted from her apartment in a Chicago suburb, as her landlord didn't want the media circus. Her friends and family, seeing the undeniable video proof, backed away. The professional karma, the airline union, which Tanya had invoked as her savior, dropped her case within hours. While we fight for our members' rights, their statement read, we cannot and will not defend a criminal assault on a passenger. This behavior is indefensible. Serena's flag to the Star Alliance was a quiet, professional blacklisting. Tanya's name, employee number, and photograph were circulated. The civil suit which Serena's lawyers filed was a slam dunk. Tanya, unable to afford a lawyer, had a default judgment entered against her. A 25% garnishment was placed on any future wages she might earn for the rest of her life to pay the damages and legal fees to Summit Air. She was untouchable. She was toxic. She lost her pension, her 401k, which was seized in the civil suit, and her travel benefits. The 22 years of her life she had pleaded for were erased in 22 seconds. She had flown around the world for 2 decades, and now she couldn't even afford a bus ticket out of Chicago. 1 year later, the cover of Forbes magazine showed Serena Washington, not in a stuffy boardroom, but standing on the winglet of a brand-new Summit Air A350. Her hair was wind-swept. The bruise was long gone, but the steely look in her eyes remained. The headline, "The View from the Top: How Serena Washington Turned a Slap into a Renaissance." The article detailed how Summit Air had posted its most profitable year in history. The service and respect training, which Serena had personally overseen, had been a massive success. Customer satisfaction scores were at an all-time high. Skytrax had just awarded them Most Improved Airline and Best Cabin Crew in North America. The incident had become a legend in corporate circles. A case study at Harvard Business School on crisis management and authentic leadership. Serena had taken a moment of profound disrespect and weaponized it, using it as a fulcrum to pivot her entire company toward excellence. She had proven, in the most public way possible, that she had zero tolerance for the exact kind of prejudice and entitlement that passengers feared. In doing so, she had won their unshakable loyalty. The article mentioned the former flight attendant in passing, noting she had faced legal and professional consequences. The reality of those consequences was far from a sterile business school footnote. The city was Bakersfield, California. The place was the Crossroads Diner, a 24-hour truck stop off the 99, smelling of stale grease and industrial-strength coffee. The linoleum floors were sticky, and the vinyl booths were cracked and patched with duct tape. Behind the counter, a woman with dull, stringy blonde hair pulled back in a hairnet slopped chili into a bowl. She was 50 pounds heavier. Her face was puffy, her eyes permanently red and swollen. Her uniform was a polyester mustard yellow dress stained with hot sauce and bleach. A small plastic name tag read simply, Tanya. This was her life now. She had fled Chicago, changed her last name, and after 8 months of unemployment, had finally landed a graveyard shift job at a diner that didn't do background checks. "Hey, mustard!" a trucker barked from a booth. "I asked for mustard 5 minutes ago. What, are you deaf and stupid?" Tanya flinched, the way she always did now when a customer yelled. The old, arrogant fire was gone. She was a hollowed-out shell. "Yes, sir. Coming right up, sir," she mumbled, her voice hoarse. She scurried to the service station, her back aching. She grabbed the mustard bottle. As she turned, her eyes caught the small, grease-caked television mounted in the corner. It was tuned to a morning business show. And there she was, Serena Washington, smiling, powerful, standing on the wing of a jet. Tanya froze. The mustard bottle slipped from her fingers, splattering on the floor. "Damn it, Tanya!" Her manager, a sweaty man named Sal, roared from the kitchen. "That's coming out of your paycheck! Clean it up! Now!" Tanya didn't hear him. She was just staring at the TV, at the woman whose life she had inadvertently launched into the stratosphere, while her own had been plunged into this greasy, beige hell. She remembered the feeling of that woman's skin against her palm, the satisfying crack of impact. It was the last satisfying moment of her life. She thought of her condo, now owned by a bank, her travel benefits, which had taken her to Paris and Rome and Tokyo, her seniority, her pride. all gone. All turned to ash because she couldn't control her temper. Because she couldn't stand the sight of a black woman in seat 4B. A single, hot, angry tear rolled down her cheek, mixing with the sweat. She picked up a dirty rag from the sink. "Peterson!" Sal bellowed again. "Table 4 needs a check, and clean up this damn mustard." Tanya Peterson, once a queen of the skies, bent down. Her knees popped. With a pathetic, whimpering sigh, she began to wipe the mustard from the sticky floor. Her high-flying life was over, grounded permanently by the inescapable gravity of her own actions. And that's the devastating story of Tanya Peterson. It's a brutal reminder that the rules of karma apply at all altitudes. She thought she was a powerful senior flight attendant, but she was just a bully. She thought Serena Washington was just a passenger she could abuse, but she was the one person who could, and did, take everything. In 24 hours, a 22-year career was erased, a reputation was destroyed, and a life was permanently grounded, all because of a single, racist, violent act. What do you think? Was the karma too hard, or was it exactly what she deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. This story is a wild one, and I want to hear your take. If you found this story as gripping as I did, please do me a huge favor and hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Make sure you subscribe and turn on all notifications so you never miss another story of insane drama and instant karma. And please, share this video with anyone who needs a reminder that you should always be kind. You never, ever know who you're talking to.